Because when we talk about people, we talk about culture. And we are so happy because United Cities, local governments, and also all partners, we managed to integrate culture in this new urban agenda. You see these some paragraphs that includes culture as important component because it's about people. When we see space, there is no soul, there is no spirit, there is no culture. You feel empty. You don't want to see every city looks like New York. You don't want to see every city looks like somewhere, Geneva or somewhere. We have to keep our identity. This is why we put culture as a core pillar of sustainable development. And in our work, so I will share the experience of some cities in Asia, how we manage to integrate culture in our life. This is one example of Jeju. Jeju is very famous on three things, which are women. Women in Jeju. Jeju, I don't know if you know, Jeju is in South Korea. It's a very beautiful island. Three things they are very famous. One is about women. They have women who do diving, and this has been past decades. It's very famous, and they have been discussing also with UNESCO to get women diving as part of the heritage. And this is also traditional intangible cultures. We call it sea women, Hanyo. In Korea we call it Hanyo. And Jeju language rhymes with other things. And they managed to keep, and the number of these women divers are decreasing. So this is why we want also to keep this as a preservation. We also see another culture policies in Jeju. There are several empty spaces in the cities, and then they use it and reactivate again using several kind of attractions, like they engage artists, they also engage urbanists, and then also like this kind of private cultural and art programs. So this is just some examples, and let me also explain about the organization that I belong. This is for UCLG, ASPAC, because I represent Asia Pacific. Asia Pacific is the largest section of UCLG. We also have a UCLG Europe here, UCLG Middle East, and also some members from UCLG Africa. So there are 8 regional sections of UCLG. This is why, and I'm based in Jakarta. What we do is integrating culture in our planning, our management of the cities. Because when we look at Asia Pacific, it's the most diverse region in the world. How many? I think we have more than 3,500 languages, different accents, different dialects. So how can we preserve that and also make it active? And this one, because of the time, I will not explain all, but under UCLG Culture Committee, the members of the Culture Committee managed to also discuss about Culture 21 actions, commitments, and many cities have integrated those culture in their management planning as well as in their operations. So you can see in the Culture 21 actions commitment, how culture related to human rights, how culture related to heritage, how culture related to education, environment, economy aspect, equality, social inclusion, and public space as well, and governance of culture. And because of the time, I will not explain, but James will explain about this as well. And this is the president of UCLG ASPAC, is governor of Jeju. We created UCLG ASPAC Culture Committee. It was set up 2 years ago, last year in Jeju, and we had some members including one city in Indonesia. This is Surakarta, Solo. So we also organize capacity building programs. We also have best practices compilations, like this is the case from Wuhan. another one also the case from Vigan, the Philippines. And if many of you come from Indonesia, you also see that the mayor of Solo at that time, Jokowi, is now the president of Indonesia. He managed to put culture and make Solo livable again. So this is the case of Solo. And because of the time, if you want to join, what kind of activities on the UCLG ASPAC Culture Committee? There's also include advocacy, also include capacity development and training, knowledge sharing, and pilot projects as well. So other things, if you want to join, we have exhibition booths over there. Please come. We also have a bag, goodie bag. So you can also collect that goodie bags. Now I would like to give a chance to James Sol from the American Planning Association to talk a little bit more about this, why culture is so important in New Urban Agenda.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here in Indonesia. I think the cultural heritage aspect is very important. I want to emphasize, mostly in the short time that we have, some resources for all of you that you can use in your own communities. Point number one is that cultural heritage is actually a pillar of sustainability. The reason I say that is if we look at traditional settlement patterns around the world, they're based on local knowledge. They're adaptive to the local climate. They use local materials. They're mixed use. They're not car dependent. So the settlement patterns that we have traditionally built around the world are actually models for sustainability. We have to look backward to move forward in the case of cultural heritage. Second point is that the International Council on Monuments and Sites, which you can't see it, I have an invisible hat from ICOMOS. But ICOMOS is the organization of professionals that advise UNESCO on World Heritage issues. And in 2006, we started working on a problem that we developed. That is, with all the wonderful cultural heritage in the world, not all of them are going to become World Heritage Sites. So we started working on something called the Historic Urban Landscape Recommendations. These were guidelines that were developed from 2006 and finally adopted. Actually, UNESCO's first policy on urbanization since the 1970s. UNESCO adopted and published the guidelines on managing the historic urban landscape. So if you Google historic urban landscape UNESCO, you'll find these guidelines, and they lay out a strategy for analyzing everything from small rural villages to suburban enclaves that can begin to determine what are the cultural aspects, how do the people get involved, and why do they like the place that they live in? What are the aspects of it? Is it the streets? Is it the shops? Is it the parks? Is it their neighbors? All the different elements in the analysis. And then the second part of the HUL approach is actually coming up with strategies for all the stakeholders and all of the local governments and the private businesses to work together on this policy and planning strategy to conserve the things in their community that are important, while also allowing for changes that are needed to be economically viable and to have quality of life in terms of housing and so on. So it's a way to balance urban development with cultural heritage. And the third and final point that I want to make is that planning is often thought of as something that's kind of done in the abstract or top-down, but cultural heritage gives the opportunity for planners and professionals and the local community to work together on the plan based on the values of the local community. And this, to me, is the fundamental thing to take away, is that cultural heritage is an expression of the values of a place. And in SDG 11, there's a specific role that says preserving cultural heritage. And ICOMOS has published a paper on cultural heritage as a pillar of sustainability. So if you want to go into more detail on both of those topics, cultural heritage as it relates to sustainability and the historic urban landscape, do look those up and get more information. The final thing I'll say is to pitch a session that we're doing in cooperation with the Indonesian Heritage Trust and UCLG tomorrow at 6:30 up in Crystal 2. And we're going to go into more case studies about these topics that we've been discussing in this short presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite Ajay Suri. He's from Cities Alliance. Cities Alliance is a multi-donor program. They also have a program related to heritage. And Ajay is from India. The first time when I interact with Indian people, they always say it like this, I thought it was no when you ask questions to them. But actually it means yes. So sometimes you have a different cultures, differences on cultures and how we behave and how we react, how we respond. This is why international cooperation is very beautiful, because we want to know better how to engage with the people from different cultures, differences. Yeah? Please, Ajay.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Well, in the morning when you invited me for this speakers forum, when I said this, I did not mean yes. I said maybe. But thank you very much. It's a good opportunity to share our thoughts on urban heritage management. And I'm going to share some experiences. But the starting point, why is UCLG ASPAC and Cities Alliance talking about cultural heritage? We are totally focused on city development, strengthening of local governance processes, and still here we are talking about cultural heritage. What is it in there in cultural heritage which offers something attractive for the cities? One, the cities need to manage their cultural heritage because it's important to pass it on to the next generation. But is it only conservation, or are we talking about something broader? Cultural heritage management offers huge opportunity for the city to reduce poverty. Poverty reduction by ensuring higher access for the people to urban services, and also the opportunity for high livelihood avenues. But unfortunately, most cities look at heritage from the conservation perspective. City planning is in silos. Heritage management is a silo which does not engage with city planning and city development at large. Cultural heritage, when we talk about cultural heritage, it's only the tangibles. It's only the built form that's talked about, man-constructed or natural. Intangibles are generally lost in the discussions. How do we break all this? How do we ensure that when we are talking about cultural heritage management, we are not focused on simply the assets, the tangible assets, but we are talking about a heritage zone. We are talking about integrating the heritage management with city planning and city development. So there is the need to adopt what the UNESCO calls the heritage urban landscape, which is an area-based approach and covers various sectoral programs. That should be the starting point. Why is Cities Alliance talking about this? A few years back, 4 years back, the Government of India requested the World Bank and Cities Alliance for technical assistance on urban revitalization. What was the motivation? There are hard data available which show the concentration of poverty is the highest in inner core areas, which also has the highest concentration of historical sites. Can we merge the two? And that is what we thought could be a good outcome of the technical assistance program, which could develop tools and mechanisms to integrate urban heritage management and city development planning at large. We work with 4 pilot cities, help these cities to install governance and institutional mechanisms for integrating this process. We also help the city to engage with multiple stakeholders to list down the heritage. What is it that they would like to pass on to the next generation? So listing of heritage assets should not be freezing the use of 500, 5,000 housing units. It should be more in appreciation of what is heritage and what needs to be passed on. Also, we talked about the development of heritage zones, improvement of services in heritage zones, and ensuring that people have access to these services. So, in effect, achieving the goals of poverty alleviation. We talked about developing the intangible assets to promote livelihood avenues for the poor people. All this would ensure a higher footfall of the tourists, and we wanted to ensure that the poor have a higher share in the expenditures made by the tourists as well. All targeted towards poverty alleviation. It gave us huge satisfaction that this TA resulted in a change in mindset at the national level. It resulted in the formulation of a heritage city development program at the national level, initially covering 12 cities with an investment of around $20 million. And currently we again have a technical assistance in support of the 12 heritage cities covered under this mission in India. And we are trying to install the processes, trying to ensure multi-stakeholder engagement in preparation of heritage city plans, and trying to ensure prioritization and investments in the prioritized areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for useful information, Ajay. I have a few minutes for questions. Anybody would like to share some experience? Anybody? Any questions? Okay, please. Check.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm very pleased about this talk because this is a real housing we want in the future. Housing we try for people and not for businesses. My question is about the role of ISO and norms and standards, which is driving progress at the end of the day in urbanism. Thank you.
Your question is about standard.
Yeah, when you build a building, you have to follow the guidelines, the rules, and the norms. And often norms are also source of poverty. Thank you.
I'll take a crack. I think what you're asking about is looking at housing and how housing and heritage can be coexistent. Is that right?
I mean, most of the time when you build a building, you don't look at the cultural aspect, cultural value of people. Norms doesn't include culture. When we are talking most of the time about housing, we are just talking about US standards. And we don't norms. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a question actually that's been, speaking from the United States standpoint, historic preservation originally had a conflict because of building codes in many cases. And so one of the things that you have to do is understand that you can adapt older buildings actually cheaper in many cases than you can build a new building. This is something that plagues every city. It plagues Surabaya, it plagues Jakarta, Beijing. If you look at these cities, they tear down a great number of housing units because they're substandard, but because the pressure from construction to build for a short-term economic gain outweighs the actual long-term benefits of reinvesting in existing buildings. Now, I could cite hundreds of examples, but basically what the governments have to do is look at the value of renovation and revitalization and rehabilitation along with new construction. I'm not saying don't build anything new. I'm just saying that there needs to be a balance between the cost of revitalizing existing units, and think of the carbon footprint that's already in the buildings that are being torn down and taken to some landfill. Okay. That doesn't get included when you're talking about a green building. Somebody says, oh, we got a green building. Well, what did you tear down to build the green building? And where did you put it? You put it in the landfill. Okay, so it needs to be holistic in thinking about that.
I think standards are important. How you define the standards has to be in the context of the local heritage. How do the development control rules treat historic buildings? They generally tend to freeze the renovations. They tell the owner what not to do, what all the owner cannot do. But you need to turn it around and have some kind of a design catalog defined in the local context, which means if an owner would like to renovate the facade of a building, historic building, the design catalog should be able to tell him what should be the design of various components, design of windows, doors, color of the buildings, everything. So that is where the DCRs need to be contextualized at the city level in the local heritage perspective.
I think we need to close this session because we have another session coming up. I just want to do a little promotion. We are having a launching of the projects on public space near here in Tapandan. We are working with UN Habitat, UCLG, ASPAC, UCLG, and also the city of Surabaya. All of you are invited on the launching. What we do in that kampung is that we revitalize it by bringing back again the culture that have been missed. So we want to have you there and see you again maybe tomorrow and today, because there are also several sessions that we are organizing, including the one with Cities Alliance that are coming up now. Thank you very much for your time.